Right, so that's that. Now, first thing I'd like you to do for me, please, is just, oops, I've frozen on my OneNote. Does this sometimes? How annoying. Let's see. Let's try a different one first and then come back. Might unblock it. There we are. Good. What I'd like to do for me first now, please. Can you please just remind yourself of this section of the poem, please? So a little bit of a read through for me, please. Okay, where I've just sort of blocked off and read. So that's that first part about Cleopatra. So if you can just read that on page 10 to 11 there, you've got on the screen in front of you. I'll give you what. I'll give you to 9 just to sort of read back through those lines. Anything that strikes you interesting, again, sort of building on what we're doing from yesterday, annotate onto your own copy in OneNote there, and then we'll obviously annotate together, starting there at 9. So if you just have a read through, okay? Okay, I want to begin to focus first of all a little bit on how the portrayal of Cleopatra as a character within the poem, as a sort of persona within this poem here, differs from Helen of Troy here. Afraid I'm probably going to be coming to you a lot today, Fionn, on these points of questions. I'll try and keep it to as reasonable a number of questions as possible. Okay.
Okay.
All the merits will be coming your way for this. So what differences do you notice between the portrayal of Helen of Troy and Cleopatra?
She's kind of got like a power over men.
Yeah,
Seems more like
yeah,
strong.
yeah. There's that sort of clear sense. Yeah. I'm just going to put this into black. I think stand out a bit better. And she does appear to be far more in control, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What do you think is the basis of her power, Fionn?
It's quite sexual.
Yeah, not just quite, isn't it? It's to do with sexual power here. Yeah. And apparently, I mean, Duffy's not kind of making this up. I mean, again, there's sort of historical accounts and whatnot, and she did appear to be a ruler who did use that sort of sexual power over men to manipulate and control certain situations. And so she's just, obviously, it's a hypothetical. With Duffy going back there, she's kind of reimagining these scenes. But yeah, the sexual power that she wields, yeah. Oops. With Helen of Troy, that kind of idea of sexual power it is a lot. It was a lot more passive. It was kind of done to Helen of Troy. Here, it's more a sense that yeah, Cleopatra's the instigator. That idea. So as well as sort of sexual power, we can see this as a bit of politics as well being used within this. And anything else that struck you about that section of the poem, Fionn?
Just like how in control she was.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she does appear more dominant than Helen of Troy. Yeah, they both kind of meet this, it's similar kind of ends, isn't it? And it just shows you either side of the coin. It's not that different. Okay, so let's begin to look and put some annotations in. First things first. So we've got this. She never aged, which that in itself that begins to sort of suggest, what we can think about here is a timeless quality to Cleopatra and her beauty. It's both the person and this idea of beauty. Okay, and then we have an interesting use of language here. It talks about she sashayed up the river. Well, what does sashayed mean? Do you know, Fionn?
It's kind of like a dance, isn't it?
It's a form of movement, yeah. You can, and it's that real kind of when you think about it, it's the swaying of hips, and best way to think of it. Think of it, the way that the way that models walk up the catwalk, in that kind of weird artificial way, where it's kind of the kick of the hips as they're walking down the catwalk. That's what we mean by that sashaying, that sort of thing. So if you walk like that, what does that tell you about the person? Do you think? If you walk like that, what do you think you are?
Like she knows she's beautiful and she's
Yeah,
trying to use
yeah,
it.
yeah. That's it. This is about sort of knowledge. Yep, of self. It also kind of oozes confidence, isn't it? To walk that way, you've got to be a confident person. You couldn't be a shy person trying to do that. It would just look ridiculous, wouldn't it? Okay. And it's that idea, coming up the river, just confidently coming at, she's holding stage, isn't she? Holding court. You can think about that idea as well. So we can think of her being sort of centre stage and enjoying that limelight, not being afraid of it. Up she comes in a golden barge, and she tumbled from a rug at Caesar's feet. Now you'll see is a YouTube clip. I might need to get it unblocked for you because I know that some of the pupils at home have been saying whenever I've given a YouTube clip to watch, it comes up as being restricted. If once you're out of the lesson, if you try to click the link and see if it will work for you, and then just message me back if it doesn't. It's a clip from the Carry On movies, which takes us to that moment in time. So the stories go. When she and Caesar first meet, this is exactly kind of how it happens. She arrives. She's carried in to meet Caesar, and she's in a big sort of Egyptian rug, and it's rolled out, and she's contained within it. The idea of tumble, that is the first of quite a few innuendos, euphemisms, double entendres, that sort of thing with language. Okay. To do this one now. So she tumbled from a rug at Caesar's feet, seen him kneel to pick her up, and felt him want her as he did. I mean, not about to be beat about the bush there. That's her, isn't it? That's his desire, that the sense of his desire that she feels, and it carries on there. She had him gibbering in bed by 12. So what sort of power is she showing that she has over Caesar here, Fionn?
Like,
Because was like, on you go, sorry.
she knows that he wants her, so she's like using it to her advantage.
Yeah, spot on. That's exactly it. And at this point, Caesar's meant to be regarded as the most powerful man in the world. So here we have it, it's the most powerful man in the world. Even he's succumbing to a sort of sexual power. And that idea, he's gibbering in bed by 12. If you gibber, what is that? What's that saying about your speech and your thought, Fionn?
It's kind of like nervous or like rushed.
Yeah, nervous, rushed, doesn't make any sense, that sort of thing. He's this idea he's kind of speechless, which in turn makes him, in a way, he's lost his voice. This makes him powerless to her. Yeah. And she has him sort of firmly in the grasp of her hand, sort of thing. By now, she rolled her carpet in the sand, put up her crimson tent, laid out silver plate with grapes and honey, yogurt, roasted songbirds, gleaming figs, soft wines, and soaked herself in jasmine-scented milk. There we notice the listing that we come to expect in a Duffy poem. And again, it's that kind of, it's all very much based upon the sensory detail again, isn't it? It's luxuriousness, and again, you think of the colours, the crimson tent, and then it's grapes and honey and yogurt, roasted fish. It's everything to do with the sense. You get that sort of maybe sense of smell, of taste, jasmine scented milk. It's that sort of it's excess as well. Okay, if I just bring that back up here. So we can think about this sort of sensory overload and excess, with the food and all the kind of luxury food that she's offering to Caesar here. Okay. And it carries on in a similar vein here. She knew her man. Oops. And what we've got here, isn't it? Normally, in these kind of situations, the possessiveness and the ownership tends to come from the male gender. But here we're seeing it very much coming from the female gender, isn't it? This is female power and control. It's that idea that she manipulates him, she understands him, and even those that are most sort of inner workings of him, she knows how to manipulate. She knew that when he stood that night 10 times her strength inside the fragrant boudoir of her tent and saw her wrapped in satins like a gift, his time would slow to nothing zilch until his tongue could utter in her mouth. She reached and pulled him down to Alexandria, the warm, muddy Nile. So again, we've got more sexual puns going on. The fact that, when he stood that night, and it's how his masculinity appears to be being defined, isn't it? It is by his kind of sexual prowess. Will he be able to satisfy the great Cleopatra? Inside the, again, and it's that idea that we had a little bit before with Helen of Troy about the bewitching and whatnot. We have the fragrant boudoir of her tent. Now with that, oops, go back to my marker. With that, a couple of things kind of spring to mind. Again, it's a sense of captivating power. Sort of that idea of bewitchment, of Caesar here. But the term boudoir kind of takes us. It also gives ideas. It gives that idea of the brothel sort of thing, especially the French brothels. They tend to be referred to as the boudoir. I mean, it's just French for bedroom, obviously, but it gives that idea almost of that sort of prostitution of herself. But the same with Helen of Troy. She seemed to be that. Remember that reference to leaving the wedding ring, which is like a coin as a tip on the table. Those sort of ideas. It's going into this sort of concept again. Maybe that sort of a little bit of demeaning herself, or it's about how males might perceive this action too. We have her wrapped in satins, like a gift. With the satin again, it's very sensory, and we regard that as kind of sensual as well. With the satin, it's that luxurious material, and she's gift wrapping herself, offering herself to him. But here again, it's all about the impact that she has on him, and she knows that his time would slow to nothing. It's that sense he loses all control of the sense of power, identity of who he is, and then notice again, it appears to be everything on her own terms. She reaches and pulled him down to the warm and muddy Nile. We get this idea that this is as much about, Cleopatra brings the great Caesar down to her level. Yeah, this is a game that's played on Cleopatra's terms. And again, it makes it a little bit more sort of, I suppose, coarse, doesn't it? That idea of the warm, muddy mile. It makes it seem like a more kind of sort of basic, instinctive action behavior that is taking place here. Okay. This next section, quite interesting. If we just, I'm just going to read this next verse through, and then get your reactions. So, tough beauty, she played with him at dice, rolled sixes in the dust, cleaned up, slipping her gambling hand into his pouch and took his gold, bit at Caesar's head between her teeth. He crouched with lust. On her couch, she lay above him, painted him, her lipstick smeared on his mouth, her powder blushing on his stubble, the turquoise of her eyes over his lids. She matched him glass for glass in drinking games, sucked lemons, licked at salt, swallowed something from a bottle where a dead rat floated, gargled doubles over trebles, downed a liquid fire in one, lit a coffee bean in something else, blew it, gulped, tipped chasers down her throat, pints down her neck, and held her drink until the big man slid beneath the table, wrecked. Theo, what's your initial reaction to that then? How do you react to that section in the poem? What do you think is going on there?
Like, she is showing herself to be stronger than him and like being able to do more than him, because like he's wrecked at the end, but she's
and what does she appear to be doing in that verse?
like asserting her power.
Yeah, and what does she behave like? Does she behave in a feminine way, would you say, or in a masculine way?
More of a masculine way.
Yeah. And that sort of taps into the idea it's this idea, especially in relation to power, is that for a woman to succeed in a place of political power, that sort of thing, or in business it can be as well, they have to be better than a man, not just as good as them. They've got to be better than them. They've got to be able to outdo them. And if we think, you obviously Daniel might not be so familiar with this. Fionn, you might be a little bit. You might be familiar with Margaret Thatcher from British politics when she was, maybe from history. But one of the noticeable things about Margaret Thatcher when she was Prime Minister was that she behaved in what became to be seen as a very kind of masculine way. I mean, she was brutal in her politics, and as her time went on, she got even more brutal. And her cabinet were in absolute fear of her. But she even went to the lens of changing things like her voice. She took speech lessons so that her voice dropped a level. If you go back and kind of listen to her at the beginning when she's Prime Minister, her voice is a higher pitch, but as her premiership carries on, her voice drops lower and lower. So it sounds more masculine and as a sort of depth to it, a heaviness to it. Also, when she wielded power, she wielded it in a very kind of, as time went on, she wielded it in a very cutthroat way. And she saw herself as being, the ultimate power that nobody would challenge. Completely different to Boris Johnson. And then if we just nip across, obviously, and look at America and what's been happening this week, you think how long America now has got its first female vice president. That's a real position of power. Somebody who potentially could become that first female president of the United States 4 years down the line or a little bit later. But it says something when it takes that length of time to have that occur, and think about what they have to do to get to that, to reach that position of power, and how it's remarked upon when they do that. And again, within the poem, that seems to be the concept and the idea that Duffy is exploring here. Just highlight some of the things. It's all these kind of masculine things. So it's gambling. She's playing it dice. It's the gambling hand. Matching him again, glass for glass. So it's the drinking games that as well. And in the morning, it's he, as you said, Fionn, that ends up wrecked on the table. So she's literally drank him under the table, sort of thing. She matches him, drink for drink. And again, even the drinks themselves become sort of kind of masculine ones, don't they? It's pints, matches them pint for pint. However, there is an interesting section as well where she, and again, it shows you about the dominance, when she paints him, lipstick smeared on his mouth, her powder blushing his stubble, and turquoise of her eyes over his lids. What could we say, Fionn, that Cleopatra is doing to Caesar at that moment by, covering him with her female makeup? What do you think Duffy might be getting at there that Cleopatra is able to do?
She was kind of like putting her mark on him.
Yeah, good. And again, if she takes away, does it take away a little bit of his
his
maleness?
masculinity.
Yeah. And do you know what we call it when you take away that sort of male power from a man?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. What we're getting here is the emasculation of Caesar. And if a male feels that emasculated, that is that sort of loss of masculinity. Okay. Oops, a bit clearer. Okay, so there's that sense of loss of masculinity, wearing the makeup. It's reducing him from this sort of powerful figure to something else. Yeah, and it's almost as if Caesar becomes her toy, isn't it? Her plaything. And here we've got that sort of reversal of sexual politics. She's in control over him. More sexual puns, obviously, taking place here as well. You've got it's to do with it, of his gold. But I mean, again, we've got she slipped her gambling hand into his pouch, took his gold, and then we've got Caesar's head between her teeth. Running out of space where to put these notes now. Trying to think where's a clear space that I can put these into. Right, hang on. If we do that and then open up again to that. Yeah, fine then. Yeah. We've got more. So we've got more of those sort of sexual puns and innuendos going on there. And again, and again, when you think about it, what this does is it reduces. Oops. Again, it's another sign of this kind of reversal, isn't it? Normally, it's men who sexually objectify women, but here the reverse is happening because all the puns are being made at Caesar's expense. It's his sexuality that's being played about with by Cleopatra as she paints him up and defines him on her own terms. And then we have a whole raft of different drinking games here. Some that some drinks I can readily identify, others I can't. The sucking of the lemon, that's got to be tequila, I'm thinking, because you get the licking of the salt as well. So that kind of modern style of drink being brought into this as well. Swallowed something from a bottle, that could be mescaline, but it used to have the little caterpillar at the bottom, which you might chew, which is hallucinogenic, so I'm led to believe. The liquid fire one, I think that might be the flaming Zambuca. Okay, and so, but we're getting all, again, it sort of modernizes the context all of a sudden and has all these different drinks that they're going through, all these sort of different drinking games. All of it, again, is about sort of dominance and power, one over the other. And again, it's like these sort of two iconic, powerful historical figures are now suddenly just reduced to it's almost like two folk down the boozers matching each other drink for drink sort of thing. But again, it is, and again, that sort of modern term, that sort of demotic term, is referred to Caesar as the big man slid beneath the table, wrecked. And there, that sense that Cleopatra has destroyed him, reduced him down to this nothing. Okay. And just to begin to sort of wrap up, we've got to that sort of section now. We've got this idea about this is Cleopatra herself here. As you can see, a little bit of context, detail, because the next section that we come on to does involve Mark Antony, who she takes for a lover as well, who was Caesar's best general at this point. He is his greatest general. But because of his infatuation, his love with Cleopatra, he goes to war against Caesar. So as you can see, she's Queen of Egypt and really regarded as being influential, full of sexual power, has a child by Caesar as well. And then, as I say, Mark Antony becomes a lover, leads to this great war between Egypt and Rome, which Rome eventually triumphs in. And obviously, Antony and Cleopatra becomes a famous Shakespearean play, another of his tragedies, which reenacts this moment in history too. Okay, so on I think our next lesson is Wednesday next week. I think we go from here, sort of thing. So again, what I'd like you to do for me for next Wednesday is to go on to the next section. If you go through the OneNote again, click on the link for Marilyn Monroe as well. If you try clicking onto these today at some point, that'd be really good. And if they don't work, let me know. And where's it gone? I will get on to I'll get on to 1010 to actually free them up for you. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. And then what I'd like you to do, on the next section, we've got Marilyn Monroe. Okay, which begins here, and then that in turn leads on to the final section, which is Lady Di. Okay, starts there. Marilyn Monroe here. For next Wednesday, do a little bit. I mean, Lady Di probably more familiar, especially to you, Fionn. But for next Wednesday, if you can, do a little bit of research on both of them, Marilyn Monroe and Lady Di. And then once you've done that research, go back and look at the text in the poem here and see if you can make some annotations of your own about the kind of allusions here that the Duffy's bringing out about their lives. The clip that I've got on there will take you to this very famous scene where Marilyn Monroe sang "Happy Birthday" to the President Kennedy. But again, just as we've annotated so far, if you can begin to put some of your own ideas down on there for Wednesday in relation to the sections of Marilyn Monroe, Lady Di, make some notes. Anything that strikes you as interesting about the way that Duffy is portraying the character. Think about also how do the characters of Lady Di and Marilyn Monroe then sort of dovetail into the two earlier historical characters we've got of Helen of Troy and of Cleopatra that we've been looking at. Do they come across as more powerful or weaker women in comparison to these two? Do you see a continuous theme being spun throughout this poem in relation to these powerful, iconic women from down through history? And the fact that she moves down through history, she goes from Helen of Troy, Cleopatra, which we think of as kind of ancient history, brought up to modern history with Marilyn Monroe. That's your 1950s, 1960s, right slap up to date with Lady Di, which is within our lifetime sort of thing. What kind of message do you think is getting put across by having this sort of timeline of women down through history? Okay, and all these things that I want you to do, I'll share that with you in the Teams posting. I'll just put it in there rather than on Engage sort of thing. Not Engage, rather than on ePraise. I'll just put it in there, the sort of things that I want you to do for me for next Wednesday. And then starting next Wednesday as well, what we'll do is look at how the exam questions tie into the Duffy poems, and we'll set you a little essay to do next week. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So that brings us to the end of the lesson. Have a good weekend.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I will see you both, and hopefully Nadine will be able to join us again if our Wi-Fi behaves itself. See you next week. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Bye.
Thanks, Daniel.
Bye.
Oh, you're there, Nadine. I didn't realise you'd snuck. I'll update my whatchamacallit, my thingy now as well. So recording.